First of all, please click the subscribe button down below so you can get more of my videos. There is a completely worrying and completely immoral trend of censorship of the internet, our social media. Platforms like Google, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter are censoring what is essentially aspects that will be protected by freedom of expression laws. They are censoring, essentially, dissident political views. David Icke, who used to be a very prominent sports presenter and TV figure in Britain, who lost everything after his Terry Wogan interview, I think in 1991. And now he's been writing and operates a YouTube channel and talks about alternative conspiracy theorists and all this kind of stuff. The vast majority of stuff that he does is I completely disagree with, but censoring him for taking a different position from the World Health Organization and the NHS is completely wrong. Some of the reasons given by these platforms as to why they've removed him include that he violated our policies on harmful misinformation. He claimed that 5G mobile networks left people unable to absorb oxygen and that it was not possible to catch COVID-19 through shaking hands, and that he disputes the existence and transmission of COVID-19 as described by the World Health Organization and the NHS. So he hasn't actually broken any laws like inciting violence or hate speech or racist speech, as far as I'm aware. Instead, he's simply taken a completely alternative and of course completely crackpot, but ultimately political position. And we see this not just with David Icke, we see it with Alex Jones, and we see it with many other figures who may be, in many regards, right-wing crackpots and maybe extreme sensationalists, and the vast majority of stuff that they say may be false, of course, but we should protect their right to say it and their right to write it and broadcast it. That's a fundamental tenet of our modern society, is the belief in freedom of expression. That's enshrined in the Human Rights Act. But of course, in practice, we don't really have freedom of expression because we have appalling libel and laws in Britain. And we also have censorship in the media through many different filters, including the funding model, where alternative left-wing socialist anti-capitalist views are marginalised to the fringe media or the alternative media. But the mainstream media largely frames the debate among capitalist frameworks. And there's many reasons for that. If you want to find out how that operates, you have to read Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent that goes through all the filters of the media, such as the funding model. And it's not just censorship of right-wingers and very fringe conspiracy theorists. It's censorship as well, more broadly, of left-wing anti-capitalist socialist views. Because we know that Google have altered the algorithm so that those websites that do promote those viewpoints appear later in the search results on a much further down page, where of course it won't get as much internet traffic. But David Icke, Alex Jones, the majority of their speech was not illegal as far as I'm aware. It didn't break laws in America, and it didn't break laws in Britain, but they've been interpreted as breaching the terms of those platforms. But the problem is this. The problem is the terms of use of those platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Google, Twitter, etc. should be set democratically by us, not by those corporate boardrooms. So we should regulate the disciplinary procedures for what constitutes a banning offence and what doesn't. And we should also stipulate that unless the speech breaches a local law, so breaches the law of the United Kingdom, then it can't be banned and it can't be censored essentially. So misinformation would not be a bannable offence, because what misinformation is subjective. And it's not illegal to hold or express a different viewpoint than the state or public institution. Because let's be honest now, these platforms like Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and so forth, they are essentially common utilities. They're fundamental to modern human life. Everyone uses Google, everyone uses Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and so forth. They become essential public utilities, and by removing his right to use those platforms, we're breaching, in my view, his human right, what should be his human right to freedom of expression. And if it is true that these institutions should be regarded as public utilities, then we should have much greater control over them, and we should regulate them heavily to stop unfair sanctioning and unfair censorship essentially. And maybe in the long term they should be fully democratized and handed over to the public, but that's a completely different question. But if the user is not, inciting violence and doing things that would clearly breach the law, in my honest opinion, it should be permitted and he should be protected to say that stuff, even if by many people's standards it would constitute misinformation. But let's be honest, experts disagree. There are some experts, although it goes against the scientific consensus, that disagree with lockdown policies, either because they don't agree the virus can be reasonably contained, or two, the economic damage in the long term would be actually worse, could in fact kill more people than doing some mild social distancing measures and letting the virus spread. And there's disagreement in the scientific community on how airborne this virus is and the effectiveness of face masks to prevent its spread. Hence why even in Britain now, we've been told for the past 3 or 4 months that in a public space, it's not recommended to actually use face masks, even though many countries have adopted a legal policy where they have to adopt them in public. And yet there's now possibly changing that advice so that we are going to have to use face masks. I believe that the NHS, when it comes to the advice on diet, is completely wrong. I don't agree that people should be eating meat and dairy on a regular basis, because I believe the evidence is overwhelming, and I've done videos on this and I'm going to continue to do videos on it. Scientific evidence through the past 100 years that eating a plant-based whole foods natural diet is our natural state, a starch-based diet around bread, potatoes, beans, peas, rice, lentils, corn, etc., is our natural state. And by eating animal foods, dairy, oil, and some refined foods like refined sugar, because we eat a diet that is far too high in animal foods, far too high in fat and cholesterol, we suffer the tragic consequences, which are all the degenerative diseases: heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, vision loss, hearing loss, sexual impotency, obviously heart attacks and strokes, are all caused, in my opinion, based upon what the science shows, are all caused by eating this animal-based diet. Does that mean that because I disagree with the NHS's guidelines, which would say that you can eat animal foods as part of a regular healthy diet, does that mean that I should be censored for saying that. That's completely ridiculous. No one would agree that is right and fair. So should it be a breach of terms to show differing scientific and expert opinion that goes against the NHS and World Health Organization or states' advice on any of this? Of course it shouldn't. And the idea that those institutions are completely sacrosanct and couldn't possibly be wrong is also false on many topics, not just on the coronavirus. So it's completely healthy to allow dissident opinion, even though I accept that there isn't any scientific advice that would support his claims. They are complete crackpot fringe claims. But he should have, if he honestly believes them and honestly believes there's evidence to show it, he should be free to broadcast those views. We shouldn't allow corporations and the state to determine what the truth is. We should permit dissident alternative views. Now, a lot of David Icke's views are complete crackpot nonsense about dragons and all this other stuff. And again, his principal point about this 5G is also false. That it's and the coronavirus, etc. But he should be free to say it, as long as his speech is not inciting violence and is not breaking a law. It should be permitted, and it is completely wrong of these platforms to censor him for having an alternative dissident view. And it is completely embarrassing and completely wrong for people on the left and who claim to be socialists, who want individuals like this to be shut down. It is a disgrace. Shame on you. These individuals should be free to speak what they want.